I talked about royal babies and how delicious they might be. I've got to talk about this, haven't I? Because this is news today. Harry and Meghan's home renovations cost £2.4 million in taxpayer funds. Now, the BBC have to explain this is not directly to them. It's not like, you know, the taxpayer, it's not like the Treasury just went, here's £2.4 million. No. The BBC have to explain in great detail really what's happened here. They don't just get the money, okay? Harry and Meghan didn't just get this £2.4 million to renovate their home before they moved in. These rich people from the royal family who are worth billions of pounds from stolen assets that they got from places like India and whatever. If we don't talk about that now. Don't talk about that. No. So they say this in the BBC. Frogmore Cottage. Frogmore Cottage. Doesn't sound somewhere that you would want to spend £2.4 million on, unless it's in Wind in the Willows, but I digress. Frogmore Cottage in Windsor was turned into a single property for Prince Harry and Meghan from 5 separate homes. So 5 people live there, and I assume here the state went in and said, you 5 peasants, you can fuck off right now. Yeah, somebody with royal birth wants to come in and with his wife and, you know, settle up here, so you can bugger off. The couple who moved from Kensington Palace in April before the birth of their son Archie, imagine how much, oh, Archie must taste lovely. Anyway, paid for fittings. So it's they pay for the fittings. Well, that's the bed and shit, isn't it? The fittings and the washing machine and the tumble dryer and the... Of course they should pay for their own fucking dishwasher, but anyway. The Queen's sovereign grant from the Treasury, and this is where they don't get it directly. You see, they don't. It's not like you pay your money to the taxpayer and to the taxman. The taxman goes, here you are, Meghan and rich man with ginger hair. Where did that come from, by the way? I digress. Excuse me. Anyway, the Queen's sovereign grant from the Treasury was £82 million in 2018 and 19. So the royal family, one of the richest families in the world, got £82 million in 2018 to 2019 from the Treasury. Okay, where did that come from? 33 million was set aside for maintenance, including major work on Buckingham Palace, and this is the work that needed to be done on Buckingham Palace. Now, I was down there at the Assange rally, and I remember standing there and watching these beefeaters walking up and down and thinking, what a load of fucking nonsense. I bet you that beefeater's getting paid, you know, $20 an hour or £20 an hour, whatever it is. Well, it's just a waste. Imagine how many people that could fucking feed. I digress anyway. The sovereign grant is funded by profits from the Crown Estate. Okay, they have to make this. Oh, the BBC. It doesn't come from you. Go to the taxman and then go straight to them. Okay. The estate is the royal family's commercial property arm and owns land and buildings in prime central London locations and across the UK. So this is the royal family who've inherited these prime real estate properties that are now worth millions and millions and millions of pounds and can't ever be sold, probably because it's wrapped up in some fucking blue tape and trust with a blue plaque outside. But anyway, I digress. The estate is the royal family's commercial property arm and owns land and buildings in prime central London locations across the UK, probably rented out to rich oligarchs from Russia, no doubt by now, but hey, can't say that. Russia bad guys. Anyway, it is managed by an independent organisation with any profit paid to the Treasury for the benefit of all UK taxpayers. Separate accounts show the Crown Estate provided a record £343 million from the to the Treasury, up 4.3%. So they're saying that the property that the Crown owns, that the Crown Estate owns, generated an income of 343 million, and they then gave 82 million over there back to the Queen and her family for whatever the fuck it is that they do. This is exactly the sort of shit that people like me are fighting against. This is exactly the sort of stuff that drives people like me mad. They have no problem selling off NHS property, do they? They have absolutely no problem at all selling off NHS property that's, you know, obviously bought by us, same way as the Crown Estate was bought by us. We gave the fucking royal family that money in the first place, remember? They have no problem selling the NHS off. Why wouldn't they do it to the Crown Estate? Just a thought. This is from the Canary. They're great. Rising royal spending disappointing in times of austerity, says Labour peer. And they go on to explain this, and the cost to each person in the country is actually not that much to the royal family. You know, you can see there, 2018, 2019, it's 74 pence. It doesn't sound that much. But you know what? If every person in the country gave you 74%, about 74 pence, that's going to buy quite a few holidays in Marbella, you know? Campaigners have called for a parliamentary inquiry to be launched into the spending on the monarchy. Republic, which calls for an elected head of state, questioned why £2.4 million of taxpayers' money had been thrown at Meghan and Harry's Frogmore Cottage residence. Frogmore Cottage. Whilst public services were under financial pressure. Now, I'll get to that in a little bit, but I just want so it costs every taxpayer in this country 74 pence, or every person in this country really 74 pence. Every taxpayer obviously a little bit more. They go on to say this in the article. The annual royal accounts were released on Monday, and at a press briefing, Sir Michael Stevens, keeper of the Privy Purse, lovely, who was responsible for the monarchy's accounts, gave details of the sovereign grant, whose funding used to pay for the Queen's official duties and areas such as royal travel, salaries, and the upkeep of occupied royal palaces. Sir Michael said at Frogmore Cottage, the property had not been the subject of work for some years. For some years. How many, Sir Michael? For some years. I've got a 10-year-old washing machine that just blew up. I'm pretty sure some years does not include 10 years. I'm pretty sure the older stuff that you need renovating is not because, you know, it's a washing machine that's going to fucking break down. It's more like it's a painting that needs touching up. You see my point. Sir Michael said of Frogmore Cottage, the property had not been subject of work for some years and it had already been earmarked for renovation because, you know, those paintings, they're not going to clean themselves. In line with our responsibility to maintain the condition of the occupied royal palaces estate, the sovereign grant covered the work undertaken to turn the building into the official residence and home of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and their new family. Look how much it's increased since the renovations on Buckingham Palace. That's when the renovations of Buckingham Palace came in, I think, over the last 3 years. How it's increased. I want to read the bottom bit here. The building was returned to a single residence. This is the Harry and Meghan has moved into this place. There's 5 properties. They've turned it into a single residence, and outdated infrastructure was replaced to guarantee the long-term future of the property. Outdated infrastructure, really. I'm pretty sure that they didn't put a bus stop outside, you know. Substantially all fixtures and fittings were paid for by the Royal Highnesses. Well, great. Harry paid for his own fucking light bulbs. That's wonderful, isn't it? The rise of almost 20 million to 67 million during 2018-19 was due to work updating the decades-old services of Buckingham Palace and maintaining the occupied royal residences. So they say it's more now because, you know, Buckingham Palace has needed a bit of an upgrade. The core sovereign grant, which helps the work to fund the Queen and her household and pays for other activities such as the official royal travel, increased by 3.8 million to £49.3 million. The reason I bring this up, here's the thing, right? The reason I bring this up is quite simple. I'm not averse to rich people spending their money because they've earned it, right? I'm not averse to that. But it's the absolute ignorance to people suffering in this country. You know, only 2.4 million. Only 2.4 million pounds. It's only 74 pence per person. It's only 74 pence per person. I want to remind you of something, right? To the royal family, if if any of you are listening, 2.4 million, it doesn't sound a lot, does it? Well, you know what? You've had hundreds and hundreds of years to accrue that wealth. Hundreds of years. And your family's done very well off the backs of poor people in this country. And right now, the poor people in this country are suffering. And there are a lot better ways to spend that money. The royal family are not short of a fucking penny or two. They can afford 2.4 million pounds. Why doesn't the Queen just sell one of the fucking jewels that they stole from India 100 years ago or whatever it was? I want to give you a little bit of a shock, royal family, because I don't know whether you remember, but last week or the week before was the anniversary of the Grenfell Tower disaster, where 72 people died. I actually went to it, unlike a hell of a lot of the mainstream media, by the way. They weren't there. But I went to it. I've got a leaflet here that was given out. And there's a stat here that stands out to me like a sore thumb. Remember, 2.4 million pounds has just been spent on the renovations of Meghan and Harry's. Meghan and Harry, is it? I don't care. I've got my name right now. 2.4 million. I bet they didn't have to wait for those renovations. I bet they did. Obviously, I bet as soon as those renovations could have happened, it happened. As soon as those reservations to that property, which they had to turn from 5 residences into 1, I bet you that happened as soon as it possibly could. Well, 40,000 people, it says here, are still living in tower blocks with deadly Grenfell-style cladding. 40,000. That's all you really need to know about the royal family and where their fucking priorities lie, isn't it? That's all you need to know about where the establishment in this country and their priorities lie, isn't it? There's been no arrests over Grenfell Tower. None. That was the social murder of 72 people, if you ask me. If you want to spend 2.4 million on somebody's homes in this country who fucking deserve it, give it to the families of the Grenfell fire disaster.